right, let me bring in Kumar. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, Dhirendra and I would like to thank all of you for the response to our New Year special show. Lots of questions coming in. A lot of people really appreciate the list of funds that we chose and put out. So obviously, that's something that we're going to regularly revisit on the show and use through the year. But for anyone who's starting that investment, and given the number of emails we received over the last couple of weeks, obviously there are a lot of people who are going to start investing in this year. What's your word of advice for new investors?
One is that, this list is a selection of good funds for appropriate, for a definite goal and a specific temperament. So if you're a conservative investor, investing for the long term, think in terms of, getting started with your balanced fund or a large cap fund. If you understand what equity is, invested before, then consider the multi-cap fund or, the large cap fund. And then, if you are an aggressive investor looking at, trying to optimize or maximize your return, then consider the mid and small cap funds. So understanding the right thing, because if you just look at the fund and try and, if you do a wrong matching of the kind of fund which is not aligned to your goal, then you will be disappointed. Likewise, and I would say that don't miss on the basic rule that you are not investing lump sum. Even if you have a lot of money to invest tomorrow, you should avoid that. Maybe, I would say that don't spread your investment over the next 2 years, 3 years, but, definitely spread it over the next 6 months to 1 year, even if you have a large amount to invest, even if that amounts to a missed opportunity.
All right, so remember, if you want more details on funds we've picked for 2016, get in touch with us. Our email ID is at the bottom of your screen. You can reach me personally on Twitter as well. Remember, Dhirendra said use SIPs. Pick your funds or the fund category based on the time horizon that you have. That should hold you in good stead. And if you need to make any changes in your portfolio, you'll hear it first on this show. Dhirendra, our first question comes in from a woman investor. It always makes me happy to hear from a woman investor. Deepthi Nair has written in. She tells us that she has a 15-month-old baby boy. Congratulations, Deepthi. I'm sure you're very happy with your baby boy. She wants to start investing for her child's education and her own retirement. She hasn't told us what her target corpus is, Dhirendra, but she has shortlisted some funds and she sent us her financial details. Now, she's putting 1 lakh per annum in the PPF. She also has a traditional pension scheme which she's investing 50,000 rupees a year. The SBI Life scheme with a 5-year lock-in, another 50,000 rupees a year, and the LIC Jeevan Anand of 28,000 rupees a month. She tells us her husband also has a term cover. Now, she wants to know if she should continue these investments. She plans on retiring, she tells us, over the next 20 years or so, which means she's working. So now we can question all of these investments. If she's working and she has a PF, does she need the PPF? Does she need the traditional pension fund? Does she need the SBI Life pension plan? Can she do away with all of these and increase her allocation to mutual funds?
Before that, she should prepare with her health insurance and term insurance. And after that, I think, the emergency fund, and maybe, have a backup emergency fund, have your 2 lakh rupee, 5 lakh rupee, 10 lakh rupee, that defined amount, which you, and you can draw that money from all your, existing things which should be abandoned tomorrow. It's a big opportunity loss if you are not investing in equity fund for, if you substitute your PPF with a SIP in equity fund and even a mediocre equity fund, I think you will be much better off.
Let's take a look at the equity fund she shortlisted for herself. She wants to put 5,000 rupees a month in mutual funds. We'd ideally like her to increase that amount. She has the BNP Paribas Equity Fund, Franklin India High Growth Companies, iPru Balanced Advantage, and the Mirae Emerging Blue Chip. Now, here are my concerns. She's obviously someone who's invested heavily in debt investments, so this might be her first step going into equity. We also know that women investors tend to be more conservative than their male counterparts. What would you recommend? Should she be going with this portfolio? Would you recommend a slightly more conservative portfolio for her?
Yeah, it's entirely a matter of, where you actually, how you are placed in life and what your experience has been. And, going by the kind of fund she has chosen, looks like she has applied thought and chosen funds carefully. But still, she, most importantly, looking at things objectively, she has 20 years ahead. So investing for the long run, investing for the equity. So I would say that she should prioritize in a fairly straightforward manner the amount of ATC limits which she can avail, as she will be discontinuing the insurance policies and the PPF. That much money should find its way into tax saving fund, maybe an aggressive tax saving fund, and rest of the money should not be into very aggressive funds like Franklin high growth opportunity fund, or small cap funds, but multi cap funds, and with the discipline. I think the discipline will actually play the trick over this long period, and being a middle of the road equity fund investor is good enough.
All right, a middle-of-the-road equity fund investors, the funds you've chosen are good enough. And of course, if you have any more questions, you can get back in touch with us. Dhirendra is saying discipline and investing regularly should be able to mitigate any sort of equity-linked risk that you're taking with these investments. So we're really proud of you that you're taking this step. Welcome back. You're watching Investors Guide in ET now. Thank you for staying with us. It's time for our product review, and this week we're looking at the Franklin Build India Fund. Avan will take you through the numbers. Avan.
Thanks, Faye. This week we take a look at an infrastructure fund, the Franklin Build India Fund. One of the oldest funds in its category, this fund has given stellar returns over the long term. Let's take a closer look at its performance over the last 5 years. You'll see that the red line, which is the fund, has performed better than its category and benchmark in all 5 years. The fund gave its best performance in the year 2014 with a return of 93%. You'll also see that the fund has outperformed its peers in the long term with a return of 17%. However, the fund is a thematic fund with its performance depending on the performance of the sector, unlike a diversified equity fund. Does that mean you should avoid investing in this fund and switch to another category? Let's find out. With that, it's back to you, Faye.
All right, Avan, thank you for that data. The Franklin Build India is an infrastructure fund. Accepted, it's a category that hasn't done spectacularly well over the last 1 year. The entire category has sort of taken a beating. But it's a 5-star fund on value research. Tell us why it remains a 5-star fund.
No, one is that this is a fairly offbeat infrastructure fund. Yes, it is supposed to invest in infrastructure companies, and they have actually kept a caveat here that infrastructure-related companies which will benefit from infrastructure spending as well. And as a result of that, this fund is very heavily into non-infrastructure. I would say that not directly infrastructure, but financial services and private banks account for nearly 30% of the portfolio. It has come in very handy. The other advantage which was built with this fund was that most infrastructure funds were pre-2008. This fund was launched in 2009. So this fund was launched after the carnage. So I don't think it can be compared with all the usual infrastructure funds which started with a legacy. Everybody started big and turned small. This fund has actually started small after the infrastructure debacle and turned big.
Well, Dhirendra, before I ask you for your star rating on this show, I want to ask you a very straightforward question. You normally recommend that we steer clear of all thematic or sectoral funds. Does this fund fall into that category? Do you recommend any investor rely on it at all, or do you think that it makes sense for some people?
No, it does not make sense for any person. In fact, if you have to choose this, if you have to invest in equity, then any thematic fund is not worth it. We are feeling happy because this has been the best of the lot from that standpoint. But I would say that I don't see any reason why one should be investing in this fund and not in Franklin Prima Plus or Franklin High Growth Companies Fund, which will have all the flexibility, all the advantages of entrusting your money to credible managers with great flexibility, and maybe those portfolios can have plenty of great weightage on can be overweight on infrastructure companies as and when the need be, and be completely out of it if the need be.
All right, finally, Dhirendra, your star rating for Investors Guide for the viewers who are watching for the Franklin Build India Fund.
As I said that it's a 5-star fund among infrastructure funds, so that is how it gets placed there. But talking about naive investors or most normal investors who will be building their portfolio with 3-4 funds with a long-term view, any such fund doesn't fit in there. So I would say I will hold my view on rating. It's an avoidable fund.
All right, so it's a 5-star fund among infrastructure funds. But for retail investors like you and me, we're better off not using sectoral or thematic funds in our portfolio. If you have questions about that review, feel free to write to us. Email ID is at the bottom of your screen. Moving on to our hold or sell segment. Suresh Kumar has written in from Orissa. Dhirendra, he's been investing 11,000 rupees in a set of funds. He sent us a list of the funds. He's retiring next year in 2017. Now, he wants us to take a look at his mutual funds and tell him if these funds are good for the fact that he's only going to retire next year. He also has about 40 or 50 lakh rupees that he'd like to deploy, which is his retirement corpus, and he wants some advice on that first. But first, let's take a look at his funds. The Birla Sun Life Advantage Fund Dividend Option and the Birla Sun Life Equity Fund Growth Option are the top 2 on his list. Given the fact that he's approaching retirement, would you recommend he starts moving out of these funds and into something more debt-oriented?
Yes, most certainly, and I would like him to reduce his positions. It's very important to have a fairly steady, ride on growth in a manner which you can reconcile with, and that is why I keep suggesting that be with a balanced fund. These are 65-70% into equity, remaining in fixed income, but the package that you get, the day-to-day ups and downs that you see is not unnerving, and which is very important for a person in retirement. So he should simplify his portfolio, even though he has these good funds, but he should reduce it in a manner, he should reduce the count to 2 or 3 funds, 2-3 balanced funds, and have a periodic withdrawal plan from those for his income requirement.
Well, Dhirendra, the rest of his list are all from the same fund house. He has Reliance Growth, Mid and Small Cap, Tax Saver Option, Top 200 Growth Option, and the Reliance Regular Savings Fund. All of these, I'm assuming by your recommendation, should be switched out to balanced funds. Are there any balanced funds you'd recommend for him?
Yes, I would like to, urge him to, get into relatively conservative balanced fund. If I have to choose 2-3 of them, that will be from our list that we recommended few weeks back, which is ICICI Prudential Balanced Advantage, a fairly conservative balanced fund. Likewise, Franklin Balanced and Tata Balanced.
All right, 3 balanced funds are on your list right now. Dhirendra recommends that you use these funds while you're investing. Dhirendra, one very quick question also. For his 40-50 lakh rupee retirement corpus, what is the best way for him to deploy that corpus to generate an income?
I would say that, it entirely, he needs little careful planning, that what his likely monthly income requirement will be. And a small part of it should definitely find its way into something which he can bank upon, something like Senior Citizen Savings Scheme, in which he can make a maximum investment of 15 lakhs. Likewise, post office monthly income plan could be another alternative. But beyond that, if he's going to get 50 lakh rupees, I think the remaining 20-30 lakh rupees, the left from that, should find its way into these balanced funds only. And I'm confident that, these balanced funds will work to his advantage. They will help him protect the worth of his capital over time, and it will be a reasonably conservative portfolio too.
All right, so balanced funds are on your screen right now. This actually is what Dhirendra recommends for you. And of course, the Senior Citizen Savings Scheme. If you have trouble with any of that advice, feel free to get back in touch with us. Quick question, Dhirendra, from Heetal Modi, who writes in saying he parked money in Reliance Growth and DSP BlackRock Top 100 as SIPs. He stopped the SIP right now. Wants to know if he should redeem money from those funds. What would you recommend?
Yeah, the reason why you choose a fund should be the reason why you should pull your money out as well. Discontinuing itself will not help, because all your accumulation is still lying there, and the reason why you have stopped that is a good enough reason for you to pull your money out. And when moving your money, you have accumulated your money in a fund which is not doing very well now, and you have discontinued that money can well move to another fund straightway, because the whole idea of doing a SIP in a fund is to be able to average that investment, and you have already averaged that. So incremental fresh investment, you can initiate your SIP in the newer fund, and all your older accumulation can well find its way into the new fund, your new selection. That apart, you should just be careful about one thing, that what part of your money, what part of your money is still less than 1 year old, and any gain on that will be liable for short-term capital gains. So just be conscious of that, and that's not a very difficult calculation to make based on your account statement.
Be mindful of the tax implication of pulling your money out within the first year. Dhirendra, thank you so much for joining us on Investors Guide and answering all of our questions. Welcome back to watching Investors Guide. Thank you for staying with us. It's time to focus on insurance, especially in the tax quarter. Gajendra Kotari joins us to answer these questions. Gajendra, welcome to the show. First question comes in from Matthew Samuel. He writes in saying he recently applied for a health insurance policy and the company cashed the check that he gave them for the premium. But after they discovered that he's diabetic, they rejected his policy application, but he hasn't got his money back. He wants to know what he can do right now to get his money back. Well, you haven't, Samuel, told us which company this is. If you do, tell us and we'll try and make a few phone calls on your behalf. But Gajendra, it's obviously within his rights to get his money back.
It's very unfortunate to see that your health insurance policy was rejected and you've not received back the premium for more than 2 months now. That's quite an unfortunate situation. It normally doesn't happen that way. So my suggestion to you would be that first things, write to the company. Of course, on the website there are different levels of complaints, so you can start writing from level 0, and then if you don't get your response, then you can escalate to level 1, level 2, and there are different levels of officers who can handle. Even after attempting all those, you're not receiving any kind of response from the company, then you can write to the ombudsman of the company, wherein you can mention all your case histories and you can write about your experience. Even if you don't hear anything from the ombudsman, then you can write to IRDA, which is the regulator, Insurance and Regulatory Development Authority. They have a consumer grievance cell out there, so you can write a mail attaching communications what you have done with the company, and sure they would come back to you.
Next question comes in from Vasanthi Prabhu, who writes in on behalf of her son. She says that her 32-year-old son believes he does not need an online term plan. He has another 35 years to retire and he has a cover of 3 crore rupees. She says he makes about 3.5 lakh rupees a month and he has a company medical cover, but if he switches jobs, then he'll have trouble getting a similar cover. She wants to know if he's on the right track. Well, he certainly needs 2 things. A personal health insurance policy and a life insurance policy. Gajendra, how should he go about doing it?
With regard to your query, there are 2 ways we can look at it. First of all, you mentioned that your son is just 32 and he doesn't have any dependence on him. He's not married yet and you as parents are not dependent on him. So if you actually look at the fundamental rule of insurance, if nobody is dependent on you, then the person doesn't require any insurance cover, because if tomorrow something were to happen to him, the family can live independently. And you have just mentioned that his existing company has already covered him for 3 crores, which is a pretty decent amount. So I would recommend that at this stage, because he's not married, he shouldn't go for any other insurance cover, any extra insurance cover. Of course, with his salary, he could have got much higher cover also, but he doesn't require it at this stage. So the day when he gets married and his spouse is dependent on him and he has children later on, then you can relook at this exercise every 2 to 3 years. So at this stage you don't require a cover. He doesn't require a cover. In case if you still insist that he must have or he should have, he has a loan of 1 crore. So then there are online term insurance plans which are available. That those plans are very cheap. So just to give an idea, for a 3 or 4 crore cover for his age, it just costs around 50,000 rupees per annum, or 30 to 40,000 rupees per annum, which is not very high, considering the sum assured one have. So the only logic which I can give right now to buy this cover is that he's healthy right now and he's young, so the premium will be very less and he is locking this premium for next 30-35 years. Maybe in 3, 4, 5 years time, if something were to happen to him, health wise, then later the chances of getting an insurance coverage is low. So that's the only reason or circumstances under which someone can look to buy a term insurance cover. Otherwise, as I mentioned, he doesn't require a cover at this point of time.
Last question comes in from Shubham. He wants to know if he should be buying multiple small online term insurance plans instead of one large plan. Kachendra, that's obviously not something that I would recommend. How would you recommend he goes about it?
Again, I would say this is more of a myth than anything else. So if you have been genuine in terms of your declaration with regard to your health and income, I don't imagine a situation where any company in India would reject your claim. So normally when we recommend insurance to our investors, what we say that go for the one insurance company, whatever be the amount. And why I'm saying is that because over a period of time you will have anyway multiple insurance products. The logic being because every 2, 3 or 4 years you're supposed to review your insurance cover because your circumstances would have changed, your income has changed, your requirements and life goals have changed. So after 3 or 4 years when you apply for another cover, that time again you are reviewing which is the best term insurance cover in the market depending on many innovations and other factors. And that time most likely what happens, some other company anyway comes up with a better plan, and so in the process you anyway buy a different company, and that results into diversification into your insurance portfolio. So rather than applying right now for multiple insurance, because then you'll have to go for medical test for all of these companies, you have to submit the documents independent to all these companies, which is more of an hassle. I would suggest buy insurance right now of one high value, and then every 3-4 years, whatever is the best at that point of time, you can always upgrade. That would be a better option.
All right, we've run out of time in this episode of Investors Guide, but remember, you know how to get in touch with us. Email ID is at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to get in touch and ask us anything you want to ask us about your money. It's been a pleasure to spend time with you. Thank you for watching.